back. You're still watching Power Breakfast News Review with me, Freddie Ndimuli. My panelists this morning, Priscilla Nyokabi, former MP Nyeri County, Brian Weke, political analyst, TJ Kajwang, MP Waraka, and Samson Cherargei, Senator Nandi County. Just before the break, we were looking at the demonstrations and the use of force and the level of force by the police. Now I want to see the way forward. One of the headlines here on page 9 of the Standard, Raila out to win over Meru voters. Not to win their votes, to win out the Meru voters. NASA leaders are expected to take their no reforms, no elections campaign to Meru County today. Opposition leaders will be expected to explain to locals why they should not participate in the repeat election. This is the first time we're seeing such, apart from Mombasa, the number of rallies that NASA has been holding has been, the number has really gone down. But now we're seeing, like, beyond the demonstrations, there could be rallies as well to explain why the no reforms, no election mantra will continue. You had just mentioned that yes, you might be re-looking at the strategies you've been employing so far. Is this part of it, that probably you will, given the kind of casualties that we're seeing in the demonstrations, that you may slow down on the demonstrations and use a different strategy, probably go around holding rallies, explaining to people why they should not take part in the election?
No, we are not going to go down on the demonstrations. We will heighten them. We will make them better. We will make them safer as much as we humanly can. And we hope that police will understand their role in this exercise. But I do not know when you say that the numbers in the rallies have come down, although, you know, as in
comparison to Jubilee, the president and his deputy are out every day campaigning for the election.
Well, of course, you know that the NASA candidate has withdrawn.
Yes.
He's not campaigning for anything in terms of the purported 26th election. Uhuru and Ruto are. So they will invite the crowds. They will charge the crowds because they're looking for the vote. Raila is not looking for the vote. And so perhaps, I do not know, but perhaps that could answer the fact that there are fewer people coming there. But that's not the issue, whether fewer people come or not. You know, what I don't know, Fred, is why Raila is so, is so busted from all sides. You know, he campaigns, is the wrong fellow. He withdraws, is the wrong fellow. He withdraws, why is he withdrawing? He says, okay, you can go on and do whatever excess you want to do on 26th. He says, why are you have to be there on 26th. You know, I do not understand what Kenyans want the son of Odinga to do. You know, I've never understood.
What do you want the son of Odinga to do? That's the question you ask.
No, you know, the issue is TJ is not accepting that Raila has not formally withdrawn as per the law. He has refused, and that is why we're asking him, if you don't want to participate in the 26th presidential election as ordered by the Supreme Court and as under the law, why always do demonstrations, why always threaten IBC, why always intimidate everybody here and there? Because we know that the baseline or the basis is that they want a Nusumukata government. That is why they are running around and trying to create so many obstacles before the general election, and therefore we don't have any problem. He can even withdraw as 10 times as he can, but we are following the law. As Jubilee, we have read the Supreme Court. We said we don't agree with it, but we respect, and we have prepared ourselves. But that is why, you know, the problem in this country and the problem with NASA and even Raila, they have always imagined the courts of law can give him presidency or even demonstrations. It has never happened in anywhere in the world, and that is why they're always bashing the IEBC. Okay. They are saying there is a irreducible limit. In fact, that slogan, finally, they are saying no reforms, no elections. We went to the Senate, which have been boycotting religiously. We went to Parliament, and we have amended the Elections Act. Now we want to fortify and make sure the electoral process, its integrity is maintained, so that the Kenyans can get the value of their voters.
If you'll just allow me, Fred.
Yes.
Today I want to speak to this thing about Raila and nominations and all that. Everybody will know that the oft-quoted withdrawal by way of some prescribed form. You just need to pick the law and read those regulations. I was in the committee who drafted those regulations, so I know that the regulations or the prescribed forms that people keep on talking about is a form which is a result of nomination. If you are duly nominated and if you choose to withdraw, of course you sign a form which is a prescribed form. IEBC, after the court told them to go for an election, decided to jump into an election without doing nomination. I don't blame Uhuru for it. IEBC, who told IEBC not to do nominations? Yes, the court said go and do elections within 60 days. But the court did not tell them and cannot tell them how to do the elections. There is a law and the court expects them to be competent to look at the law and follow. The law is, if it is a rerun, then there is no nomination. If it is a fresh election, you must do a nomination. Where was Chebukati and his team of lawyers when they decided to do elections without nominations? Then they find themselves in an awkward situation.
Okay.
They find that they have not done nominations. Now they are forcing Raila to sign some prescribed form. And when Raila says that I have withdrawn, they say, no, you come back and sign this prescribed form. Without it, you're not going anywhere. And he says, but I have just left. Said, okay, if you have left, we are going for 26. Even then he says, okay, you go for it, but it will not be an election. He said, no, what do you want to do? Do you want to stop that election? He said, I'm not stopping the election, but whatever you're going for, that exercise is not an election.
But you are forgetting that there was a ruling.
The panelists on the table, and we need to allow them as well to speak. 8 days to go, all eyes on judiciary. These are some of the cases that could derail this poll. It's 8 days to go, and even media houses are beginning to get ready for that poll. Are we really sure that this election will take place, given the kind of petitions? And quoting on the front page of the Standard, former Kilome MP has a petition in court. Uzalendo Institute of Leadership argues 2013 presidential election relied on by Raila and Kalonzo to withdraw is not binding. Pokot South MP David Kosing contends Raila's threat to boycott election is unlawful. Okiya Mtata argues environment not conducive for poll, hence need for caretaker government. Abraham Kiplangat wants 5 other presidential candidates barred, so only Uhuru and Raila remain on the ballot. These are the cases before the court. Now this is away from the demonstrations. This is away from even the issue of saying that IBC has already gone about the process the wrong way. Do you still think, or do you still believe that we'll have an election that will stand the test of legitimacy?
I think that we have to have this election. The situation that the country finds itself is one that is dictated upon by the Constitution. And the Constitution doesn't foresee a possibility of not having an election after 60 days as ordered by the Supreme Court and as provided for in the Constitution. There's a sense in which if we get out of this 60-day election cycle, as you know, that you have a first election, then there's a contest in court, and the court had that as one of the options or one of the orders that they could give, and they have done that. The 60 days ran out on October 31st. I think that the many issues that they are on the table, and especially some claims about reforms of the electoral system, some claims about all of these other issues, all of them will have to be done after the election.
Yes.
And they are valid questions. I personally don't fault many of them, but there is no time between now and the 26th. So what we do is we have this election on the 26th. The electoral body is ready. The Supreme Court, remember, ordered the IEBC, the first and second respondent, to go and hold a further, a repeat election. They didn't ask anybody else in this country.
So we're having an election for the sake of formality, just to ensure
not for the sake of formality.
We satisfy
it is
that
also for
order by
the
the
sake of
Supreme Court?
stability. It is also for the sake of stability. Once we have the election and we have an elected president, a lot of all these other claims and all these other issues that people want to raise, I think that there will be enough time and space for them, including the irreducible minimum. Some of them, it is not possible to do them between now and the 26th. In any case, that is not what the court ordered. The court, even at the time of judgment, it did say that it didn't find anybody in IEBC culpable. There are, of course, institutional weaknesses, and from election to election, the country has been growing stronger. Our constitution is under a lot of tests now, and my fear is, if you strain the law more than the law can take that stress, then you are going to be in a lot of trouble. So we have to just accommodate sufficient stress that is within the constitutional confines. Once that is done, I think that we will be stable. If there are those many legal cases, of course, if the court now goes and changes its mind, but not a lower court. Remember that this is the Supreme Court that ordered. So it's also, it doesn't look possible that between now and the 26th, you can get a case all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court changes its mind. But I would also want the NASA colleagues, who are now really, their sort of legal vehicle is in total trouble. You get yourself out of an election that is ordered by court, that is ordered by the Constitution, and there isn't a legal way in which you go back into that election. I hope that they spend a little bit of time on that. If they don't go back into that, if they don't go back into the legal election that we're going to have, then they have to wait for their claims, or whatever claims that they have got to wait until after the election, and then maybe then the country can decide what level of accommodation.
I think it's very clear what Jubilee intention is. Go through this election, swear in the president. After that, then anything else can come. Not
anything else. Let me just correct you. Not violence. We are not looking at whether if you say anything goes.
Deputy President William Ruto yesterday said the elections have this election has to happen, and then anything else tutakutana hapo mbele tu.
Lakini sio vita. Tukutane kwa sheria.
Do you think NASA runs the risk of finding itself locked out by failing to take part in this election?
I think, in my estimation, I think NASA has already accepted that scenario. But for me as a Kenyan, there are certain issues that I need to bring to the fore. I think number one is that IBC has had a chain of blunders. And clearly, and I want to say here without fear of contradiction, that IBC is clearly now a puppet of the executive. Now, if you read the Supreme Court ruling, it was very clear that IBC needs to organize another election. What did IBC do? They went back to the Supreme Court ruling under paragraph 291, which and now they're arguing it's an obiter dicta and not really the real flesh in terms of the ruling. But in their own wisdom and their own really intelligence, they thought they will adopt that position, and they brought in Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta. When again they were posed with another legal question, you cannot as a body choose to make a decision based on something, then when posed with the same legal question, because NASA went and read at paragraph 290 of that obiter dicta that said in the event that one abandons the election, then nomination has to be conducted afresh. Then what has IBC done? After they made that decision based on that ruling, now again they are moving away from that particular ruling because it is very clear, and that in itself clearly shows that they are outrightly biased. And you know, in an election, the most important thing is the confidence levels of an election body. Now, if Kenyans now are seeing that they are blatantly supporting the executive, because they ought to have said, look here, this is what determined our definition, this is what determined our decision as the IBC, then we ought to go that route. And that is the reason why even today, if you go back to Supreme Court, whatever tenets that they use to make that decision, they'll follow that route. And Priscilla is a lawyer, she'll tell you that. You cannot rely on that particular ruling, then again now posed with a legal question, you move away from it. So clearly, that shows that they're actually being controlled by the executive. But there's a fundamental question you've asked: bora uchaguzi or uchaguzi bora? And really, for the government, for them is the one-time election. But I can tell you for a fact, we are wasting money for Kenyans, because once these elections happen, I can tell you for a fact, people will be going back to court. So it can never be about we have to just do this.
But at least we'll have satisfied the constitutional requirement or the order by the Supreme Court that you have to hold the elections in 60 days.
And not just
Jubilee is using.
Yes, from this theory about tukutane pale mbele pamoja, or let's just get this thing done, then let's have some president, and then we'll look. This is the theory of move on and all those kind of things that have hurt this country. Let me tell you, first of all, there is no constitutional crisis. Forget, there is no constitutional crisis. The constitution, and Priscilla will look back at her constitution and will find that the constitution has provided for situations what will happen even if that election of 26 does not happen. That is not a problem, and Kenyans should not they should not spend sleepless nights that there will be a problem if there is no election on 26. Let me tell you, if there is no election on 26, Muturi should prepare to be the president of this country for the time that he will organize an election for 90 days. That is what the Constitution provides. It is in the Constitution. Now, the thing is, you will have some exercise. Some people will go somewhere and pretend to be having some elections and call it 26th. They did that, by the way, in August. Under the Supreme Court, they thought that all these institutions were under them, but they forgot that the judiciary was an independent institution. It told them that that election that you went to was null and void. It was no election. Now they are going for something, and we are calling it some exercise. They do not know that there are some Kenyans, there are some institutions which are fairly independent. They will find that they have participated in null and void exercise. Then they will be in square one.
But let me add something just before we go back, because it's not just the article that brings in Muturi that is going to work. It is also the article that allows the president to remain in office until a properly elected president is brought in. That's Article 142. So what we are saying, even with the NASA colleagues, it is indeed true that the Supreme Court has said go and repeat an election. It would make a lot of political sense in this country for both Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga to go into the repeat election as ordered by the Supreme Court. If they don't come, the political problem there exists. But there are also many Kenyans who want an election. And so what we are going to have is many Kenyans want to go into the election. Some Kenyans don't want to go into the election. So we have to have it one way, so that the country can move forward. So if we have this election, we'll see the number of Kenyans who show up for that election and create some stability in terms of the systems. And then after that, then these questions about the Kenyans that don't go to election, I think that that's going to persist even after the election. But in the first place, let us have the election.
ODM vows to block officials from polls. The leaders, ODM leaders, have vowed to block election officials hired for the October 26th repeat presidential poll from accessing polling stations. We've had it was Governor Rasanga for Siaya saying there will be no election in his county. That means probably the IEBC will not even be allowed to set up polling stations. This story continues to say they're banking on a constitutional requirement that dictates that a presidential election can only be valid if voting takes place in all 290 constituencies. I do not know how true that is.
It shocks us. NASA are the masters of doublespeak, because they are saying on the one hand we respect the constitution and constitutional order and the independent organs that the constitution have set. Even Governor Asanga, even the president himself, does not have an iota of blocking anybody from participating in the election, because that is a basic universal suffrage that has been provided by Article 38 and even international instruments on how what I should be. So when they say there is no election, in fact it means they want to sponsor violence. And we know ODM and NASA by extent are the masters of anarchy, lawlessness, and they want to create chaos that they created in 2007, 2008, so that they can have a precursor for a Musumukata government. And that is what is happening, because they don't have any legal basis. They want to sabotage the process. When somebody says there is no election, Raila himself said, now you can see his governors who are allied to NASA that they want to block officials. And that is why we have seen they have tried anyway. And the first time after this Supreme Court came, they said there is 12 officials they want to remove. They have reducible minimums. They don't want to come to the Senate. They don't want to come to Parliament. So at the end of the day, this is a choreographed agenda that they want to achieve something. And what
about that requirement?
No, of course we are aware. The reason they want to sabotage is because they know they have a friend in the name of Maraga in the Supreme Court, so that it will assist them to nullify the election. Yeah, it is. But when they sabotage, when they sponsor violence, I hope ICC is watching, so that these people are put, because they are preparing the country. They want to trigger some violence, and so that they can justify them to have a dialogue. Let me just finish my so that they can have dialogue, and at the end of the day they want a Nusumkate, but we are telling them there is no even a slice or a
there is rhetorics, but there are also facts. This what I've seen here in the Standard, I do not know. I've not read it properly to be, but I want you. No. I just want us to be clear.
Yes.
Ever since, have you heard Rasanga saying that I will block people from doing elections?
No,
have you heard Raila Odinga? No, just a minute. Okay. We want to go to facts, because this thing about propaganda is not something we come to national TV about. Have you ever heard Raila saying that I am going to sponsor violence against people who want to do elections? Have you heard any leader saying that we are going to hold somebody's hands from doing something?
So you're disputing the headlines?
No. That is a journalist interpretation of the information.
Somebody that is no election. Who are they? They are not IBC.
That fellow is not quoting verbatim what this leader is saying. That fellow is talking about that when Rasanga says there will be no election. If there is null and void exercise in this county, is that an election?
So there will be no election. So there's no intention by ODM of blocking any
this thing about intention has been pushed by IBC, by Jubilee to make us say things which are not there.
Okay.
We are saying that there will be no election.
I don't know
who has ever said that we are going to sponsor violence. Who has said that we are going to stand in the door of the polling station and turn people? Who has said this thing?
But that's the idea with Article 138 too.
But who has said
that an election will be held in all the 290 constituencies in this country. And it is true that IBC is preparing to hold an election in all the 290 constituencies. If you make it difficult to have an election in one constituency, you cannot then come back and be a beneficiary of your own cause. So if Governor Rasanga does what he's saying,
we're not quoting Governor Rasanga.
That's what we're saying. We're quoting him there. Let us assume, just going by your, because the story needs to be proved, that Governor Rasanga wants to create a situation in Siaya that doesn't make it conducive for the IEBC to be able to bring boxes and bring their officials. If you do that, and if NASA does that, you cannot then come back to court and be a beneficiary of a situation that you yourselves created. I don't think the Supreme Court will be lenient anymore. You come to court with clean hands. You don't come to court with mud on your hands. If for reasons that are set out in the Constitution, the election is not up to par, that election can be challenged, but not by situations that you yourself cause. You challenge weaknesses of the IEBC. You don't go and cause violence in a polling station, or you frustrate the IEBC from holding an election in a polling station, and then you come back to court to say that, wait a minute, the election was not held in 290 constituencies.
That is where they are being
quiet for a while. Brian, is there a right way of ensuring there's no election in any one constituency, if at all that's a strategy that NASA is intent on employing?
When you hear Priscilla talking about the McVin, she's looking for him called he who comes to equity. You know, it is very difficult to prove that a presidential candidate is involved in violence in certain areas where election did not happen. But for me, Fred, when I listen to shenanigans from NASA and from Jubilee, I think we're actually taking this country the wrong way. You know, we need to sit down and talk as a country. You know, I think that people have a problem with this term called dialogue. And Senator, dialogue does not mean nusumkate. Has never meant, can never mean nusumkate. It is important that I'm seeing this country getting divided further and further. I can assure you that where we are now, we are so divided as a country, and yet we are in one country. It is the first time in the history of this country people actually discussing secession. Of course, secession can never be the answer, but that in itself shows how divided we are as a country. And it is important, and I want to urge and really speak to Uhuru Kenyatta, because he has done his first term. Now he's trying to ensure that he gets his second term, which is his last term. It is important that he comes out as the president of this republic to bring people on the table. Before August 8th elections, we sat down as a country, people asked for certain minimum reforms, and there was a bipartisan parliamentary committee that was appointed. You know, Fred, sometimes there are certain things that are more important in this country than a few politicians who are misadvising their principles. This country is going to burn.
Okay.
If you're not seeing it, then there is a problem.
Hold it there, Brian, because after the break, that's that's the one discussion we need to have. What's the way forward? We've had even members of the Jubilee Party who support President Uhuru Kenyatta's re-election calling for dialogue at this point. We've had even the international community, and we can see the EU commenting on the election of the 26th. But what is the way forward? Do we still go for dialogue, or do we leave it all out and decide to go for the election, then to put on happen then? That after the break.